What's up, Steno Squad? Welcome to the Steno Certification Podcast, where I interview StenoKey participants who have recently passed state and national certification tests. Stay tuned to get all the tips, tricks, and techniques so you can pass your next certification exam. On this episode, we have a special guest, Jamie Carroll. Jamie Carroll is here to celebrate and share her success in passing her Texas CSR. And let me tell you, it was a major journey. There were multiple attempts, and I mean multiple. But Jamie is resilient and was constantly seeking a method to help her improve. After many attempts, Jamie joined the StenoKey program and finally passed her Texas certification exam. Hey Jamie, welcome to the show. Let's start with a little info on your Steno background.
I started Steno school in October 2014. I went to ACI in Arlington, Texas, and they taught Phoenix, which I didn't know anything about Steno theories. I didn't realize how labor intensive it was. And I graduated, I think it was a little more than 2.5 years after that. And I went to work in Montana.
Okay, and so wait. You went to work in Montana. But you're from Texas, like you went to school in Texas. Why did you go to work in Montana?
One, their requirement was that you graduated from an NCRA approved school, which I had. And my best friend lived there. So I just thought it would be fun. I'd always lived in this Texas region, and I thought it would be fun to spread my wings and see how parts of the other world operated. More than anything, it was that they didn't require any testing because I had taken the Texas test when I was fresh out of school and I did not pass it.
Why do you think you didn't pass if you were fresh off of graduation?
You know, looking back, I was nowhere near ready because Phoenix was so labor intensive. And when I looked at the tests that I passed, they were all very similar, every speed. The school that I went to, they recirculated tests. So let's say, I don't know how many they had, but let's say they had 25. Mm-hmm. And all we did was test all day, every day, Monday through Friday. So eventually you came across that same test. And
I see.
After I graduated, I was looking at my tests and I realized, wow, I've passed a lot of these same tests. They weren't exactly the same. There were some variations because you got to add for the length when it gets into the higher speeds. But most of the tests I passed were similar. And the tests that they gave were not very intense. Like people's names were John Green.
Right.
So, which I can understand why they would do that because some of those proper names can really throw you. But when you're actually taking the actual test, they're not as kind to you.
Okay.
Not everybody lives on Main Street.
So, and then eventually you decided to go back to school. So tell us a little bit about that and why you did that.
I worked in Montana and it was a wonderful court, wonderful judge. Everybody was great, but I sucked as stenographer. And they loved me. They didn't know how I wrote, so they thought it was fantastic. They didn't know that I spent, way too much time using my audio to recreate these transcripts. So somebody had said to me once, and I thought it was so smart. They said, when one part of your life sucks, all of your life sucks.
I say that.
I know. That's where I got it from you. So after doing that for a while, I realized if I'm going to do this, if I'm really going to be a stenographer, if I'm really going to be a court reporter, I've got to be better at this. So I did some research, and I'd always heard about Mark. I'd always heard about Mark Kislingberry's school. And when I started Steno school, he did have a school, but it was in Houston. Online wasn't an option. And I didn't know enough about him, to do that. So, and I actually talked to him. I called his school and said, I'd like some information. I'm desperate, basically. And he talked to me. He's such a kind person. And he explained to me why Phoenix was such a challenging theory. And I bought his book. And then I decided I'm going to take his course. I think this is going to be a worthwhile endeavor. And if I can be a quarter of as good as he is, then I'll be fantastic.
Okay. And then are you fantastic? What happened?
I don't know if I'm fantastic, but I took it was amazing. His theory was so amazing to me. I had never, only experienced Phoenix, which is so labor intensive, so stroke dense. So his theory was just amazing to me. I loved it right away.
Absolutely. Did it stick? Did it click with you? Did it look hard?
No, it didn't look hard. It didn't look hard. It looked so much easier than what I was doing. You know, I was 3-stroking. I can't think of a pronunciation. There's one I would have 3-stroked it. You know, and these are words that come up a lot. So, yeah, I liked his theory right away. I wouldn't say that it stuck. It took me a while to really get it. And even now I still use some Phoenix stuff. And I think it's because I was changing theories that it took a while for it to stick. It took a while for me to feel comfortable with it.
So you started the Mark Hislingberry Academy in September 2019.
Yes.
And how often were you practicing then?
Every day. And he had a requirement for homework, and I always did my homework. And I very seldom missed class. I was all in.
I was just like you as well, from the phone call to just going all in. When you're changing theories after already working as a professional stenographer, I definitely think it's a good step if you really want your writing to be as magnum as possible.
Yes.
And so eventually we got to know each other because you started StenoKey in July 2020.
Yes, that's when I had still been practicing and still doing all that stuff with Mark's theory. And, you know, the way most schools are is then you transition into speeds. And I knew that I didn't know his theory well enough to transition into speeds. And I don't remember how, but, you know, I stumbled onto you because I had met you through Mark, and you had your StenoKey pilot program. And I called you and you said, yeah, let's give it a go. I absolutely love the way you lay that stuff out. I absolutely love it. I feel like you've spent a lot of time developing it. And the things that you have there really do help reinforce the theory. Because I felt like I had it. And then when I did your program, I realized, wow, I don't know this as well as I thought I did. So,
and how do you know the stuff now? How do you feel like you know the concepts of the theory?
There's still some things like his emergency. I mess that up every time. And I write emergency room because I know emergency room. So there's stuff I still need to work on. There's lots of stuff I need to work on. But some of the things, like his right hand phrase ender for hope and wish, I use that so much more than I ever thought I would. I use it probably every day. And thought, that's another one I use all the time. I mean, he has so many that I still haven't cracked into. His right hand phrase ender for still, I used that recently, you know, within the last week or something. And that was really kind of the first time I'd used it.
I know you have Mark's Magnum Steno Dictionary loaded onto your CAT software.
Yes.
Or do you have it? Have you merged it with your personal dictionary, or do you have it as a backup dictionary for briefs, or how does that work for you?
Separate. And I don't know, this is a software thing, so I don't know exactly, but I know it lists his dictionary first, and then my personal dictionary, and then the job dictionary. And I think it pulls from the way the software, I have Eclipse. I think it pulls from his first, then it goes to mine, and then goes to the job dictionary. I don't know. That's kind of a technical thing, but that's how it looks when I open a file.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let's now focus on something that I know you know about, which is passing your certification. So
yeah,
we have you on the show. Congratulations, because
Thank
you have passed your Texas test. And not only did you pass your Texas state test, you passed it with flying colors, like 99.7% on all these legs.
I can't believe it, really. I mean, I still can't believe it, because I'm telling you, when I did it, I didn't feel that confident. And I even said to people, mostly just my best friend, because she's in your program, so she understands the steno part. It's hard to talk to people who don't know anything about steno, because they just can't get their mind around what you're trying to say. So I kept saying to her over and over again, I hope I passed. I hope I passed. I feel like I passed. And as it turned out, I not just passed, I really passed.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the highest score of all the test takers.
I still can't believe that. I still kind of feel like they must have made a mistake somewhere, because I didn't feel that confident in it.
So how many times since July 2017, more or less, would you say you took the Texas test?
Now, I was taking RPR, because for a little while I decided I was going to focus on RPR. So between the two, I was trying to think how many times I took Texas. I wouldn't say that I took it once a year, because when I was in Montana, I wasn't so concerned about Texas. I was more concerned about the RPR. And then it was up until the RPR changed their guidelines about, you know, how long your tests were good for. because I was really focused on RPR for a while. And that's when I said, when they made those changes and I lost whatever credits I already had, I thought, well, you know what? I really wanted Texas anyway. So I started focusing on Texas again. So how many times have I taken a test at least once or twice a year since 2017?
Okay. All right.
Some years I did it 4 times a year, and then some years I just maybe did it once a year.
Okay. All right. And on those previous attempts of the Texas test, and we'll just focus on the Texas test, what would you rate your performance more or less? Like, were some of them really great? Were you really close each time? Or were some of them just terrible?
Oh, that first one was so bad. So bad. But at that time they did it wasn't online. I had to go, and they moved the cities around. So I think I actually went to Fort Worth for that one and went to some hotel where it was a big conference room, and we were all jammed in there to take the test, and we had to bring our own printer. We had to bring our own extension cords. I mean, it was a lot. It was anxiety inducing. I understand why people didn't do well in those conditions. So that was the first one I took, and it was garbage. I mean, I don't even feel like garbage. I didn't even turn it in to have it graded because it was so bad. And what was the question? I got lost there.
How would you rate your previous attempts of passing of the Texas test?
Absolute garbage. Yeah, I mean, each one, had its own thing, and I really do like testing online better because then I could do it from a comfortable place. And I already had a printer, I already had an extension cord, so I really did like that. The way Texas does it is you have to pass all 3 legs in the same day. So you could do great on 2 of them and just not pass the 3rd, and the whole thing was gone. So I don't know that I ever felt good about any of them because I didn't pass.
Okay. And then, so let's just talk about the one that you feel absolutely fantastic about, which was the last attempt that you took in May of 2022. So we're going to just talk about like the changes that you made to maybe your practice routine, your mindset, your lifestyle, but we're really going to focus in on your practice and stuff. So,
and I hate it when people say that, because that doesn't give you something tangible to hang on to. But a lot of it was mental. I finally just I think maybe I reached F it, because I just said to myself, you know what, I'm just going to take this thing until I pass. And if I don't pass this one, I'll take it in August. And eventually I'm going to pass. But one of the things I did do that I think really helped is I told myself, if Q&A, because Q&A has always been hardest for me. At any speed, Q&A is hardest for me. And I said to myself, if it's Q&A, you feel like it's getting away from you, drop the answer bank, and drop the answer bank only, not the question bank, not any words, just answer bank. Because I felt like I could figure out where the question and answer started and ended that way.
I love that.
Thank you.
No, I love that, because we normally
with that on my own.
This is the first time I've ever heard somebody say that. So I'm so glad you're here saying that, because I'll usually hear they'll drop question and answer bank, and then I'll notice so many errors just because the person couldn't really tell where the question or the answer was. So at least if it's at least you tell yourself, no matter what, I'm at least keeping one of them. It's going to eliminate a lot of the silly guessing errors when you're trying to guess where it starts or ends.
Because I, like many people in the past, had dropped one or the other. It was however I was feeling at that moment, and sometimes it was both. And yes, it was too difficult to figure out after the fact. But and I didn't drop every single answer, but when I felt like it was getting away from me, I would drop the answer bank. And then, you got this question right after it, and you can pretty much figure out where the question and answer start and end.
Okay, and so when you're practicing your Q&A, like just doing a practice file, are you practicing dropping that A bank when you need to? How do you approach your Q&A practice?
I wouldn't say that I'm practicing it, but anytime I feel like it's getting away from me, drop the answer bank, and the answer bank only. I feel like when I committed to that, it made a difference. And I do that working also. If it gets away from me, I'll drop only the answer bank though.
Okay.
I feel like you can really figure that out. But if you drop yes, when they answer the question, that's just an error right out of the gate that you can't figure out later.
Exactly.
I don't know. If I drop a word, I don't know that I dropped it. But an answer bank, I know there's supposed to be an answer bank in here.
Absolutely. Even your spell check will tell you, hey, there's 2 Q's, there's not an A in between. Yep.
Yes. That made the biggest difference.
Okay. Oh, and what about Q&A extensions? Do you use those?
I don't, because, they'll make a slight change. Like maybe I do use yes, no, yes, sir, no, sir, okay, I don't know. But, just the very basic ones. Because if they change it up a little bit, I get flustered. I get confused. Like maybe my answer bank with the extension doesn't have it as a contraction, but that person said it as a contraction.
Right.
And it throws off my whole game.
And so speaking of which, and I'm guessing probably your answer will be similar, but what about the Q&A phrases like state your name for the record, or can you please state your name? Are you using those, or what about when they say it's slightly different especially when it comes to testing?
Well, like state your name. I've got something for state your name. And I usually would do state your name and then for the record. Because if I stumble, and I'm talking testing wise, because in real life, it's okay to stumble. So, state your name and then for the record, because I get a little flustered if I can't remember the brief. Like I think state your name is just STA, at least mine is STAURM. Mm-hmm. And then for the record, would you throw in the D?
Right.
But then I'd have a moment of, did I throw in the D? Did I not throw in the D? Does it have the D? Does it not have the D? Because I am not a great tester. I get test anxiety is real, especially when you're at 95%. Now, I have a friend who's an anesthesiologist, and she is one of my biggest cheerleaders. And she didn't, her certifications weren't at 95%. So,
wow.
Right? So she's she got her boards. She didn't have to pass at 95%. I don't remember what the number was. It was a good number, 85 or something, but it wasn't 95. So right. Test anxiety for me is real. So I just want to go with anything that feels comfortable.
And now people are going to have surgery anxiety more than ever.
They should not, because she is a wonderful anesthesiologist. She's so good at what she does. Okay. So don't have no anxiety, people. You're safe. You're safe.
Okay, so what did you do for the testing anxiety? Like, what did you do even the months leading up to that test?
I just kept telling myself, if you don't pass it, it's okay. And not everything is riding on this one test. It's okay to not pass it, and you'll just keep taking it until you do pass it. I didn't want to be deflated if I didn't pass it, because that threw me. When I would fail a test, I was just completely deflated. I was so upset and frustrated, and then that leads into the self-doubt. So that was the cycle I wanted to get away from.
In addition to your Q&A strategy, your testing strategy of dropping the answer bank, are there any other testing strategies that you utilized that you think contributed to you passing the test?
That's a really good question, and my knee-jerk reaction is no. I feel like it was that answer bank. I've always been okay with lits and jury charges. Q&A was always my Achilles heel. It was the most difficult for me. So I spent more focusing on Q&A. I practiced Q&A more than I practiced anything else. I just wasn't worried about lit, and I wasn't worried about jury charges.
How did you balance your practice time while working full-time in court in the last year or so?
When you're working in court, you're out doing it. So that is helpful. But I still did my testing, but I still my main focus was Q&A when I came to actual practice, not just writing.
Okay.
So
all right.
I don't know what the ratios were. I don't remember how much time I actually spent, because again, I was in court all the time doing it. And then I had time when we weren't busy. I had time to practice at work.
Were you practicing high speed stuff, or were you sticking? Okay.
Yes. And I was, again, mostly focused on Q&A, because that was my difficult spot. And I knew other students that said they absolutely loved Q&A. They hated the other stuff. So I guess it's different for everybody, but Q&A has always been difficult. Who's talking? What's happening? Oh my gosh, we're changing speakers.
How high was high speed for Q&A?
At least 240, but I never tried 260, but I'd listen to it.
How do you think listening to the dictation helped you pass your test?
I think it's really valuable, because you're just, hands aren't on the machine. You're doing everything else. You're listening, you're paying attention, you're focused. You're noticing when the speakers change, you're recognizing briefs. You're just not moving your fingers with it, which honestly, I can't move my fingers at 260.
Okay.
Not cleanly.
Okay. And when listening to it, would you ever make notes to yourself of maybe, hey, I got to practice a certain brief, or I wonder if there's a brief for that, or would you?
Oh, yes. Yes, I would hear phrases and think, I know there's a brief for that. Or like, wish and hope. I would hear it and go, I know that one.
So when you started realizing certain things, you were hearing them frequently, and you probably obviously recognize you were hearing them frequently at work as well, but it kind of triggered something within you to, hey, I got to look this up.
Yeah, I think listening is very important. I mean, isn't that the first step?
Right.
You got to listen to it and be able to pay attention and stay on the speaker, or you can actually,
it's true.
in my opinion, before you can actually put your hands on the keys and do that.
Well, what about on the flip side? What about hard copy practice when you're just looking at the transcript or the script?
I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of that, but I love it because I can go as fast or slow as I want. I can stop and write things down. That's one thing I would get flustered with testing is I would hear something and know there was a brief for it, but I didn't know the brief at the time. And then before you know it, I'm 6 words behind. So hard copy I thought was wonderful. I could even look at the hard copy beforehand and write out the briefs so that when I was actually writing it on the machine, I had the brief right there on the paper. EV360, I know you don't use that, but EV360 has on there, it's not the actual test part, but it's in the practice, is you can print out the piece, the hard copy, before you take it audio-wise. And I liked that.
And so how often would you say you incorporated hard copy practice in the year before the test?
25%?
Okay.
30%?
And then when would you know, hey, this is a good time for me to do hard copy practice?
I liked hard copy. And the thing that I liked about it is I could figure out the briefs and the phrases. So I always liked it. Even if I didn't do it on the machine, I still do it. Just when I'm, have some time on my hands, I might see a phrase in something I'm reading and I kind of just make a note of it.
Okay. All right. And so let's talk even more about your practice leading up to the test. How often would you transcribe your practice notes?
60, 70% of the time.
And then what about actually analyzing the notes?
You mean like reading the steno?
Right, just reading the steno, just focusing on that.
I didn't ever solely focus on reading steno. Usually what I did is I would, look at the English and then look at the steno. Particularly if there was an untranslated, I would definitely look, but I would look at the English and then, how you've got it right there on the side, then I would look right over at the steno. So I never actually just only looked at steno. I always looked at both.
Yep, I understand. Like I do the same thing. I like to always have my steno, the pane of steno notes. I always like to just have that visible. I think it makes a good difference. And especially when you're working, you won't have your translation. Usually your translation, you'll have it translate to something either phonetic or something that looks closer to what you might have been misstroking. But when you at least have your steno notes there, it's so much easier to just quickly tell, okay, what was that misstroke really supposed to be, or that.
Yeah, and you can see, I see what I was thinking. And a lot of times I look at it and think, that's a good stroke, and I redefine it.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't the best stroke, but I see, if I can look at it and say, I see what I was doing there, I'll redefine it.
Absolutely. What about lifestyle changes? Did you make any lifestyle changes, maybe like 3 or 4 months before testing?
No, I did not. That was also part of that effort factor, is because I had done all that stuff. And when I used to drive to Arlington to go to school, it was about a 45-minute drive each way. And I would listen to all these motivational speakers or books, or, I was always trying to get in the mindset, and I was always hitting it hard and fast. So this last time I just wanted to relax, wanted to not freak myself out so much. And I think all that stuff was valuable. Listening to all those motivational speakers and motivational books. And I know I've mentioned to you before about the talent code, which Mark had suggested that one to me. And it's good. It's really good. Or Steno, because it specifically talks about musicians, was one that it talked about. And I can really relate musicians to Steno, because a lot of them are, if you play by ear, which I don't play an instrument, but if you play by ear, you're hearing it, and then you're taking your fingers and recreating it on your instrument. So to me, that sounds a lot like Steno. So right. I like to hear what musicians did. So there was a lot of that in the talent code. So I really enjoyed that book.
Is there anything in particular, like one thing in particular that you started because of the book, The Talent Code, that you have now made it part of your practice routine?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things he said, this particular musician would take a piece, break it down into smaller pieces. And when they made a mistake, and this is also where hard copy kind of helps, when they made a mistake, they would stop there and do it again until they got it right. So I liked that, but I felt like you could only do that with hard copy.
Okay.
I think it's hard to stop an audio.
In retrospect, what about your practice routine, like the 6 months leading up to the test of you passing your Texas test? Is there anything that you feel like you could have changed or improved on with your practice routine?
Oh, I could have been more consistent. The Texas exam, they had one, I think it was February. It might have been March. It doesn't matter. But I missed the deadline because I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't watching the store. So when I was ready to register, I realized, I just missed it by a few days.
Okay. So, like, when you look back, why do you think you were not as consistent as you would have wanted to be?
I was tired of testing. I was tired of all the heartbreak that went with it. And I guess maybe I was a little bit afraid of failing again.
And so then obviously when you got your results, that was super exciting. What did you do to celebrate?
It went in stages, and it was actually kind of funny. I took the test on, I think it was the 11th of May, and it was 20 days until and every day I would check my email at least 6 times a day, hoping to get my results. And I finally got them, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't even see what my score was. I just saw pass, and I was so excited. I was over the moon. I don't even remember what I did. But I was like walking on a cloud that day. And then a couple days later, I thought, well, I'd like to see what my score was. Because at first I thought, I don't care, I passed. I don't care what my score was. I wasn't expecting it to be that good. I thought I maybe passed, like squeaked by. Because at the time I took it, I didn't feel that confident. I felt like it was getting away from me, the Q&A. I felt like the Q&A was getting away from me. And I did drop quite a few answer banks. But then when I saw my scores, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And then I thought, maybe I've forgotten how many you're allowed to miss. Like, maybe this isn't as good as I think.
Oh.
So I actually looked it up. How many errors am I allowed? I just couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. I still keep thinking somebody made a mistake grading wise and I didn't do that well.
Okay. And then now that you've passed, do you feel like your confidence level is different at work, or is it the same?
I feel the same at work. I really do. But I do have a confidence of, I don't know if confidence is the right word. Maybe it's just gratitude. I'm so grateful I finally passed. I feel so relieved. Like, wow, I never have to do that again. I never have to go through that again.
Well, so you're not going to take any more certification tests?
No, I might.
Okay.
I'm excited. I mean, I'm going to work for a little while and see what I feel like I need, what would be beneficial. Yeah, I'm sure I will. I just right now know, like, okay, I don't have to.
Right.
Like there's a lot of freedom in that.
Absolutely.
But okay, I don't have to. Because before, if I wanted to work in Texas, I had to pass.
Right. And so now that you have your Texas state cert, but you're still working in Oklahoma?
Yes, I'm still working in Oklahoma, and I'm a full-time court reporter. I have an officialship, but one of the things that Oklahoma allows is they have a contract position. So I am switching to that August 1st, and I will be working in the courthouse 10 days a month. And the remaining days, I will be doing depositions via Zoom, and they're all Texas depositions because their page rate is better than Oklahoma's.
Oh, okay.
that was the reasoning there.
All right.
So that's what I'll be doing. I'm really excited about it. I've never taken a deposition. I've always worked in court, so it's going to be different. And I'm going to hear so much more civil stuff that I'm used to. So I'm really looking forward to it.
How do you think attending StenoKey contributed to you passing the exam?
What your program does that I hadn't ever had before is it really solidifies the theory. The way you have it laid out and the finger drills that you have that are specific to this particular unit, chapter, whatever, the way you slowly build, and then the repetition of it. Because in the past, I might get through a chapter or something and be done. I don't know how often I really revisited anything that first go around in school. I wasn't taught to do that kind of stuff. We just showed up and tested, and that was that. But StenoKey really helped me learn the theory, know the theory. I mean, of course, you still make mistakes and you still forget stuff because Mark's theory is so much. So I don't even feel like I've really scratched the surface on what he's got available. But I desperately needed to learn it, to know it, and the way you broke it down really helped.
Okay, Jamie, thank you so much for all of the tips that you've given us and for just really sharing this part of your life and what you did to pass your test. And I hope that this can help many, many stenographers out there listening.
I hope so too, because we need lots and lots of court reporters.
Absolutely.
Not enough.